So in this video I'd like to talk about authenticity as a path to love. Even saying that authenticity as a path to love can be rather triggering for some people. Who says I'm on a path to love? I didn't say anything about being on a path to love. I just want to feel good. I want to be successful. I want to have a relationship. Each of us, when we were young children, we loved like a puppy dog without condition. We actually had to learn how to discriminate. We were taught by adults how to be sexist, how to be ageist, how to be racist, and how not to like certain people. So all those behaviors are absolutely, totally learned behaviors. And so the process started in at a very young age of how to limit the radiance of our heart, actually how to dim our own light. And what we've all been trying to do since then is to get back to that state, even though we have the inner voices that argue against it and say that that's dangerous. We live in a dangerous world, and it is dangerous to feel that amount of love or to be that open to other individuals. Whilst I would agree that not all areas of the world are safe, but when we talk to individuals who are living in relatively safe areas of the world, who are going about their lives in a fairly normal, peaceful way, they have their work, they've got their children, or they have their careers, or they have their creative outlets, and they live in cities that are not war-torn or absolutely crime-ridden. In their day-to-day lives, there is still living from this place of limitation. And so authenticity as a path to love is about coming to the realization that perhaps what we have been doing in all of our searching, in terms of the personal development programs that we've attended, in terms of the therapy that we've done, or the books that we've read, we've been looking for that one insight, that one key, that one process that is going to give us the love that we're looking for, or give us the peace that we're looking for, or give us the relationship or the career success that is going to make everything okay. And so very often we don't feel good. We're feeling alone. We're feeling embattled. We're feeling that despite all of our success, there is no real support there. That we may be viewed by other individuals as being extremely capable, and yet nobody knows about the deep underbelly of vulnerability and fear that is there. And so we carry on as if everything is okay. And so that is not authenticity. And so we wear different masks. Those masks can vary from a peace and serenity mask. You see many in the so-called New Age community or spiritual communities that wear a peace and serenity mask. Everything's okay in the world. I've come across many individuals who have ventured into the world of non-duality, reading material on non-duality and material that comes from self-realized beings, where they deny themselves duality. No matter whether it's good or bad, it's all good. And so a peace and serenity mask can be one of the masks that we take on, or a love mask, an absolute love mask. I love everything and I love the world, and it's one of the ways to cover up a deep hunger there is to step into the full realization of who we are. And there's a deep hunger there for connection, but a deep, deep fear of intimacy. A hunger for connection and a deep fear of intimacy. And that is often what creates a love mask, and covering up the feeling, the deep, deep feeling of perhaps there's something wrong with me. Perhaps I'm bad. Then there are power masks, power and confidence masks. So men and women that walk around capable of absolutely everything, able to do everything, anything, not afraid of anything, and yet when you look at their body language and when I see the structure of their auric field, there's a lot of fear there. And so we all have these different masks. One of mine used to be a peace mask. I was okay with everything. And not really. Absolutely not. One of my defenses was using my intelligence to avoid confrontation and conflict. And so instead of expressing any feelings in a confrontation with someone, I would just become extremely intellectual in the conversation and win the argument that way, as opposed to really facing what I was feeling. So that was one of my defense strategies. And if I spot myself doing it now, I notice it with my breathing and also in my body, and I take a step out of it for a moment. And so we can actually learn what our inauthentic masks are, and then begin to step into authenticity. If our childhood has had many elements of feeling shamed, then stepping into authenticity can also be a great challenge for us. When we've been raised with parents who rely too much on discipline, or who believe that criticizing the child is what motivates the child, then there is a lot of shaming that takes place, and we can feel a lot of shame. And so one of the challenges with authenticity is taking the risk that our shame may be revealed, and in that vulnerability that somebody else can take advantage of that. And indeed it happens that others can take advantage of our vulnerability, or even have a distaste or disdain for our authenticity, or even be dismissive of it. We can often experience that our fears, our vulnerability, can be a trigger of rejection from others, that they themselves cannot tolerate to see life as it really is. For example, if they know you to be a peaceful person, a loving person, if they know you mostly from your mask, that when you take the mask off and you present authentically, that often comes as a shock to those who are around you. And often that shock is intolerable for them. Because if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not sure that you can survive, if you are not sure that you actually have the answer to this, I'm the one who's been looking up to you. I'm the one who relies on you to be strong, so that I know that my world is safe. And so they can become very uncomfortable with us showing authentically that we're afraid, that we don't know, or that we feel lonely. Have you ever met someone who on the surface seems extremely popular to you? Wow, they have lots of friends, they have lots of charisma, they're very successful with their career. And so we hold this person up as an ideal, as something or someone to aspire to. I want to be more like him, I want to be more like her. They have got a fantastic life. So what happens when they reveal to you it's not that fantastic? What happens when they reveal to you the disappointment that they're experiencing with their own success? That it didn't give them what they thought it was going to give them. And so very often, when we express ourselves authentically, it stimulates great discomfort in those who hear that. And so the invitation is to be authentic anyway. Because those people around us who cannot tolerate our authenticity and the vulnerability within that, and the layers of shame within that, and then the deeper core wound that's underneath that, those who have no tolerance for that, perhaps the real answer is that there is no place for those individuals in our lives. So then we come to a more challenging path. Well, what is my life going to look like? It might be a little bit emptier. However, what is the quality of the life there? And so therefore we must ask ourselves, what is the actual quality of our friendships and relationships? What is the level of authenticity there? For there are many individuals, and I've worked with more than I've had more than 6,500 private sessions with individuals, closer to 7,000 private sessions with individuals. And one of the things that I see over and over and over again, and many of my clients are financially very successful. They're lawyers, they're doctors, other professionals, architects, musicians, etc. So people who are considered to be very successful in their own right. And one of the things that has revealed itself over the years is that many human beings have and sustain relationships that are not built upon authenticity. And when the relationships are not built authentically, so whether that be a marriage or a friendship or working with a colleague, etc., having lovers and friends, neighbors, when there is no authenticity or a lack of authenticity, then there is no real connection. And the heart connection is often missing. The depth of the heart connection is missing. And that may not be true for both parties. That may be true for one party and not the other. Maybe our own heart is open to that individual, but there's a lack of authenticity coming back. There's a lack of authenticity coming back. And so it can even happen when we have somebody in our life who appears to be walking their talk. They know all of the language around personal development, therapy, working with their issues. They often refer to the things that they've been working on and they've resolved. I've resolved my mother issues, I've resolved my father issues, because all of these things have come up and this is now how I've dealt with them and looked at them. The vast majority of individuals involved in personal development work and therapy are still reluctant to touch and to move through the core wound. I describe this as preparing the garden or working with satellite issues. And so we can spend many, many years working with the stories that are around the core wound. So the stories that have become manifest in our lives as a result of the core wound. And the core wound could be abandonment. The core wound could be betrayal. The core wound could be a feeling of being unwanted or ugly or I'm bad. So this is the core wound that we hold in a very tight, dense place within ourselves. And out of that come to life all of these satellite wounds. And we can kid ourselves into believing that we're really dealing with our issues by spending years working on the satellite issues. However, in reality, it is preparing the garden. It takes a very special individual to be able to dive straight into their core wound when they first start working. And so we all prepare the garden for a while, and we inch closer and closer and closer, and then we start touching into the core. Even if we have done some shadow work, really working with the negative aspects that we have, our need to punish ourselves, our need to punish others, our self-hatred, our hatred of others, our need to be destructive, to destroy ourselves or to destroy others. Even if we work with shadow aspects of ourselves, the shadow is part of our last-ditched attempt to keep us away from the core wound. Because the core wound, in essence, causes feelings of wanting to die to come up. Facing the possibility that your very own mother and father did not love you, or that your very own mother and father abandoned you, or that your very own mother and father could have found you ugly. Facing the possibility that that could be true is a fate worse than death. We have enormous fear of that, and it is the place of separation. It is where we have separated from the true essence of who we are. And so authenticity delivers a lot more than just healthy relationships. It delivers actually a healthy relationship to the self. Because what we have constructed around the core wound are many masks and many faces. We've actually developed many coping strategies. Many coping strategies for either avoiding that deep wound or for keeping it hidden at all costs. We do not want anyone to know that that is how we truly feel. So much so, we're very good at hiding it from ourselves. And so with the path of authenticity, it is the doorway into resolving the core wound, the one core issue that is terrifying. It is the place of separation to our essence. And another way of saying that, it is the place in which we have become separated from our divine nature. It is the place in which we have become separated from God. It is the place in which we have become separated from God and the knowledge that we are divine beings. So that is what stands, the core wound stands in the place between the knowledge that we are one and the same as God, the true essence of who we are, the knowledge that we are love. Love is not something we do, it is not something that we become, it is something that we are. That's where the core wound stands. It stands in that place. However, because we separated, we then created a lot of inauthentic aspects of ourselves. We developed something called a personality or an ego. And so part of this path of authenticity as a path to love, is about refining the personality and removing all the defense structures, allowing those to crumble and to die. There's nothing wrong with the ego. It's only when the ego is defended and destructive and lives in a world of blame and projection, etc., lives from a place of defense. And so there's this other idea with many who have ventured into the spiritual world, that somehow the ego has got to be destroyed. The ego is wrong. The ego has desires. We're not supposed to have desire. There is one fundamental desire that's really important for all of us to tap into, and that is our longing to be the presence of love. That is our longing to be free to love. If that's not desire, then what is it? Each of us has that desire. We may call it, we desire to be successful in our career. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means one of two things. Either I long to set my creative spirit free, which involves opening the heart, and when you set your creative spirit free, you stand in your magnificence, and what happens when you stand in your magnificence? There is natural generosity there, and love flows. Or a distortion of that is, I long to be successful so that others will love me, so they will value me, so they will see me. They'll say, ah, look at that person there. Look at the car she's driving. Look at the house he owns. Look at what she has achieved. I'm envious of him. And so there are two different ways of being successful. One is allowing your creative spirit free, and the other one is another expression of that hunger for love. And so living authentically is understanding that there is really actually only one thing that we all want, and that is the freedom to love and to be love as we were when we were children. And so what needs to be understood here is that the essence of who we are, that childlike, innocent essence of love, didn't go anywhere. It's hidden under layers. And so the path of authenticity starts with finding out with whom is it safe to be vulnerable, with whom is it safe to be honest. And here, when I speak about honesty, I'm not talking about expressing opinions. There are so many individuals who simply do not understand the difference between expressing an opinion or speaking their truth. And this expression, oh, I'm just speaking my truth here, is overused, and has been used by many individuals as a way of communicating their truth, but making it sound all good and authentic. When we speak our truth, we are connected to our vulnerability, and we're connected to our heart. And we have some connection to our wound. That is missing when we're expressing an opinion. That is missing. So the difference is, let's say for example, you are always late when you come to see me, as an example. So when I'm in opinion is, well, I really don't think that you should do that. I think that's really sloppy behavior, and it shows a lack of respect. So that I'm going into shoulds and opinions and I'm giving a lecture. What is more authentic is to say, I notice that every time we meet, you're late, and I feel disrespected. I feel disrespected, and that hurts me. And I'm wondering why I don't seem to be important enough for you to take our time together seriously. Do you hear the difference in those two? Hugely. But most of us do the former. We get annoyed, we get irritated, and that is because we don't want to risk showing what is really there. Now, of course, there are those individuals who live from their wound all the time, but that is another distorted way of feeding off the energy from those around us, and none of us want to be around those people. Oh, I don't want to go and visit her. She'll be moaning all day long about how terrible her life is. I don't want to be visiting him because he's just going to be angry all day about something his father did 20 years ago. So we've all met people like that who are stuck in their suffering and actually use it as a way to drain, to feed off other individuals. And so this path of authenticity leads us to the grand prize. And the grand prize is sitting right behind the core wound. And the core wound is ugly. And it's frightening. But it is an illusion. It is an illusion. And I've touched into it several times and moved through it several times. It's not as if it just simply disappears. Each time we encounter it, its power in our life is reduced. And so it begins to lose its power. The more that we encounter the core wound, the more we realize that it's not going to kill us, and that even shame itself doesn't say anything about us, that we can survive those feelings, and that when we begin to touch into the core of the essence of who we are, that divine spark, that innocence that we seemingly left behind deep in childhood, once we've touched that a few times, then we know that we can always ride that wave. And so a life of authenticity delivers the grand prize because it helps us to work through the layers. And once we have had the courage to live that way for a while, we begin to see that the payoff and the reward is far greater than the initial pain that it might cause. Living authentically in the beginning can cause us pain, because as we begin to peel back the layers of inauthenticity and the layers of defense, we begin to reevaluate our friendships, our careers, where we live. We begin to reevaluate everything in our lives, and that can be part of a painful process. The reason why tens of thousands of people are not queuing up to follow this path of authenticity is because most of us settle for the status quo. We're looking for ways to be successful. We're looking for a way to have a happy relationship or more love, but without ever having to face the challenge of being authentic, without ever having to face the challenge of being vulnerable, without ever having to face the challenge of dropping into our shame, without ever having to face the pain of facing our original wound. And therefore what ends up happening is that either individuals are looking for personal development or healing to give them a specific result. I want to get married, or I want to resolve my relationship issue, or I want to be successful at something. So they're looking for a very specific result, or for the circumstances of their life to be more comfortable than they were before. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. Really, there isn't anything wrong with any of that. We have all eternity to resolve these deeper issues, if not in this lifetime, then in another lifetime. And I'm still on this path and I haven't resolved all of these issues. So there's nothing wrong with that. However, when we truly look at what is it that we really want, if we have the courage to step beyond just simply looking at a life circumstance or a particular relationship, what we really want, what everybody hungers for, is the freedom to love and be loved. And that requires surrendering. And that requires surrendering to what is true and authentic in the moment. And that requires having the courage to allow the masks that we carry. It can be the mask of wisdom, it can be the mask of spirituality, the mask of love, the mask of power, the mask of knowledge. All of these ways in which we carry ourselves through life and present ourselves to people, that when we begin to drop those, that we discover what is authentically me. And what is authentically me, and what is authentically you, and what is authentically you, is love and peace. Love and peace. In my near-death experience back in 2013, that was the one deep thing that I discovered more than anything. That's all there was. That is all there was. Love. And so the deep realization that when we get there, there's no there. It's already here. It's been here all the time. And so a life of authenticity takes courage, and it takes the willing to surrender. It takes a willingness to be vulnerable. It takes willingness to face our shadow and all of the defense structures that we put in place, and it takes willingness to face that what we think is true about ourselves and what we have believed to be true about ourselves and what we believe is our essential selves may not be true at all, may not be true. Much of our personality is a construction, and it's constructed in defense of our core wound. It is constructed in defense of keeping our hidden shame hidden as deeply as possible from anyone else. Because the experience of having our light dimmed or snuffed out as a very young child is beyond painful for us, and we never want to re-experience that. And so we've constructed a very sophisticated defense mechanism to stop anybody from ever doing that again. But what we do is do that to ourselves over and over and over again. And therefore, once we step onto the path of authenticity, we then also begin to realize is that redemption, true redemption, comes from having forgiven ourselves for not being authentic to the path that we know has been laid before us since we were children. Redemption comes from forgiving ourselves for having denied who we truly are. Redemption comes from forgiving ourselves for having denied that our deepest longing is to be free to love. We list lots of things that we want and say that this is our true desire, but our true desire is to be free to love and to be free to live. And being free to live involves many different things. What is life in this physical world? What is life? We live in a physical world, so life is enjoyment, enjoyment of the physical body, enjoyment of the senses. So it is about affection, it is about sexuality, it is about food, it is about creativity. So life is all about creativity. We are creative beings. We create houses, we create meals, we create art, we create vehicles. We are very, very creative beings. And so it is about having the courage to love and to live. Most of us are surviving. Most of us are opting for safety and security. A lot of our career decisions are about what is going to make us safe, what is going to give us some certainty, what is going to give us some security here, so that we can survive. And so living authentically is about getting in touch with, I want, above all other things, to be free to love. And I want to live fully. And so it is about deciding that living a small life is no longer acceptable. There can be distortions along the way with that. There are many who are giving the appearance of living a big life, but that crumbles. That crumbles. Those big lives that can be created when the core wound has never been faced, they invariably crumble. Whether it takes 1 year or 10 years or 20 years, it will crumble. Because there is no authentic essence that is the underpinning, that is the support, that is the foundation for the big life. And so bigness is supported by an authentic relationship with the core wound and with the essence that is behind that. So in order to reach that core essence, then the wound must have been addressed. Maybe not healed fully, but it has to have been encountered in some way. I have seen and met many people who are either living big lives or who have lived big lives where it's in the process of crumbling or has crumbled because the underlying wound has been avoided. It has been avoided. And that is because many of us believe if only we can create the circumstances of the big life, if we can create the money, if we can create the relationships, if we can create the fame and fortune, then I will be safe. But if it doesn't emanate from the magnificence of our true essence, it is an illusion. It is an illusion. And it will crumble and disappear. And perhaps many of you have experienced that. That's all for now.